Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And Jack, it happened once again where the Diamondbacks had a shot to sweep an opposing team. They won the first two games of this White Sox series. They were not able to finish the job today. And of course, the story is Zac Gallen. The primary story from this game is Zac Gallen, who for the second consecutive start, really struggled against one of the lesser teams in baseball. Today's final line, 5 1/3 innings, 5 runs allowed. Unfortunately, Jack, this has been par for the course for Gallen here in 2025.
Another peek behind the curtain for our listeners. Jesse and I are in negotiations to determine whether or not we will do further live post games after a Zac Gallen start.
Our track record here is not great. Maybe I don't know if it's our fault, Jack. Maybe the Snakes Territory podcast is singly responsible for Zac Gallen's struggles in 2025. That seems like maybe an oversimplification. But yeah, it was just another game where Gallen just wasn't sharp. We've talked a lot about how the stuff is maybe not quite what it was in past seasons, but he's also just making a lot of location mistakes, Jack. A couple of curveballs that he hung in the middle of the zone. Lenin Sosa hit one for a 2-run homer. Of course, there was a home run in the first inning of this game as well by Andrew Benintendi. That pitch was a fastball that was well above the zone, and it just looked like Benintendi was waiting for it, basically. I don't know if I can pinpoint one specific thing here, Jack, that's causing this. It just seems like kind of the perfect storm of a whole bunch of different factors that have resulted in Gallen being, frankly, one of the worst pitchers in baseball.
The stuff plus metric is really banging on him pretty hard. I mean, the stuff is definitely degraded. In 2022, his stuff plus was, I think, 105 or 108 and went to 98 and then 92. And this year it's 90, which is 67 out of 70, starting pitchers in the game. So that's qualified starting pitchers. So, there's a stuff issue here. The stuff is not as good. The movement is not as good. And the location is the location. I mean, all pitchers make location mistakes, some more than others, obviously. But we always talk about the location mistakes that get hammered. And sometimes we mention, hey, look at that pitcher. It was right in the middle. He got away with that one. But we don't track them as closely as we do the ones that get smacked. And I think when stuff is degraded, you just don't get away with as many of those. So it's a combination. Now, Zac himself is saying it's delivery issues. He always points to his delivery. And he's saying now that his delivery has been out of whack for the last year and a half. He said that on the radio in an interview with John Gamadoro. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're having delivery issues for a year and a half, 2 years, and you're not able to repair them, then it just comes down to repeatability, which is the key element of successful athletic execution. You've got to be able to repeat, whether it's your hitting mechanics or your pitching mechanics or your free throw mechanics or whatever sport it is. Repeatability is, in fact, key. So I'm not a pitching coach. I can't pick up what's not being repeated well, but we have the results, and they're just eye-wateringly bad, and it's very frustrating for Zac, for the team, and for everybody that covers and roots for him to do better.
One of the big narratives surrounding Zac Gallen this season that you and I have talked about a lot, Jack, is Torey Lovullo kind of leaving him in a little bit too long, it feels like, in a number of situations. And Torey, somewhat understandably, kind of having a hard time maybe coming to grips with the fact that Gallen of 2025 is not the same pitcher that he's been the past few years, and maybe the hook needs to be adjusted accordingly. I think this, to me, Jack, was maybe the first game where we've seen Torey definitely have a faster hook than I think he normally would with Gallen in past years. We saw in the 6th inning, it was a leadoff ground rule double by Kyle Teel. Then Austin Slater flew out, but it was a fly out that very nearly left the ballpark. And Torey had a guy ready to go. He had Juan Murillo warming up, and he just went out and got him. And Gallen only had 87 pitches. It wasn't like he needed to be removed from the game from a pitch count standpoint, but this felt like a calculated change on the part of Torey Lovullo to get Gallen out of this game a little bit earlier.
A welcome one at that. Couple of, during the last homestand, a couple starts back, I did ask Torey specifically about this, whether he was having trouble accepting the new reality of who Zac Gallen is. And it was a tough question for him to give feedback on. Obviously, it kind of semi acknowledged it, but as a manager and a motivator, he doesn't want to throw his pitcher under the bus, in a press conference. But he absolutely had a quicker hook today, and he's going to probably need to continue to do so going forward.
We could reduce this game down to just Zac Gallen being the reason the Diamondbacks lost. That ultimately is not the case. As I realize that I have the wrong score listed on this slide, we're gonna change that, pretend it never happened. 7-3 is the final score here. As the White Sox ultimately beat the Diamondbacks, but the
Taylor
offense.
Scott liked your previous number.
Yes, I think he did. Unfortunately for him, we support the truth, the actual final score here on Snakes territory. Yeah, it was not all because of Zac Gallen that the Diamondbacks lost today, although certainly he did them no favors. A bit of a quiet day for the offense, Jack. The Diamondbacks in the first inning against Sean Burke had 3 straight strikeouts, and yet they still managed to score because they were unable to get. I believe it was Geraldo Perdomo, was it, in that top of the first inning, who reached base anyway. And then at that point, that allowed Josh Naylor to actually take an at bat in the first inning, and he did what he often does in Chicago, which is hit a home run that gave the Diamondbacks an early 2-0 lead. But they ultimately were only able to add one more run the rest of the way.
Yeah, the offense obviously is struggling the last couple of games. I mean, after that 10-run outburst on Monday, the last 2 games just haven't really, had that oomph to it, and it's understandably why. I mean, yesterday they didn't have Suárez and Naylor, as well as Carroll and Moreno, who were out for a long time. And today, Naylor was back and he did his damage, but they're going to be missing Corbin Carroll and they're going to be missing Gabriel Moreno for quite some time. It's going to be over a month. And, in the case of Eugenio Suárez, it's TBD. We do not know yet. So, it's going to be tough for this team to continue to win games 9-3, as Mike Hazen said, and we're going to get to that. It's probably going to have to be a lot more 4-3 going forward.
Yeah, and certainly good to get Josh Naylor back in there at the very least. He, I guess, was fine and able to go today, and hitting the home run in the first inning is certainly a good sign there for his health moving forward. But yeah, as you said, Gino's situation is still up in the air, and of course, there's lingering injury situations with a number of other members of this offense as well. So we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that. Well, we are interested in talking a little more about the trade deadline. You mentioned some comments that Mike Hazen made. We're going to talk about Zac Gallen in particular and how the Diamondbacks might approach him as the trade deadline gets closer. But first, we're going to take a quick break here on Snakes territory.
FT fam, did you know that Huel has sold over 500 million meals around the world, and now it is your turn to try it. While I drink it.
Drink up, Scott, so I can discuss Huel and how I love it. I had some for breakfast this morning. I like to drink it post-workout because of the protein included in it. It always tastes delicious, whether it's strawberry, banana, chocolate, vanilla, whatever the flavor is. It tastes like a dessert, honestly. It should not taste as good as it does.
I agree. New customers get 15% off plus a free gift at Huel.com when you use the FT code. That is FOUL, F-O-U-L, at Huel.com/FOUL. Don't miss out. Try Huel today for a perfectly balanced meal. If you miss a meal, if you're looking for a little protein boost, you just saw me drinking the black edition, ready to drink. There's the vanilla flavor. I love what the chocolate brings to the table. It's really damn good. So give it a shot, FT fam. 15% off plus a free gift for new customers with the code FOUL.
Well, Jack, entering the start, Zac Gallen had a 6.80 ERA over his last 8 starts. Not great. This has certainly been a trend here for a while. We appreciate all of you here who are here joining us in the chat. We see a whole lot of Zac Gallen chatter happening right now. It seems like a number of people, Jack, are talking about whether the Diamondbacks should move on from Zac Gallen, whether they should replace him in the rotation. As much as Gallen is struggling right now, I do not see that happening. Number one, because Gallen getting right is a really big part of the Diamondbacks finding success the rest of the way. I mean, if they're going to make the playoffs, it's probably going to have something to do with Zac Gallen finding his way again. And number two, the D-backs couldn't really replace Zac Gallen even if they wanted to, given the state of their pitching depth right now. So I don't think we're having a serious conversation about Gallen being removed from the rotation. However, there is a trade deadline coming up just a little over a month away now, Jack. And of course, Gallen, we figure, is a piece that could be interesting to other teams. Or could he? Do you think we've maybe reached a point here where other teams are going to have pause about whether they even want someone like Zac Gallen on their team down the stretch?
Oh, they'll want him. I mean, clearly the return that you might have gotten for him, and thinking about this at the beginning of the season versus now, is greatly reduced. But there's going to be a conga line of teams out there that think they can fix him or would be willing to take a shot at fixing him. Now, they're not going to give up their number one prospect to get Zac Gallen.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, in not only about his the amount of I guess I want to say what's he going to do the rest of the season, but how much money is he owed? How much time is left in the season to get some value out of him? So, I mean, if you look at July 31st forward, whoever takes him is going to have to pick up $4.5 million in salary. The Diamondbacks would be giving up the opportunity to make a qualifying offer to him and thus potentially lose out on a draft pick, although the risk that he would accept the qualifying offer grows by the day. And then you have to ask yourself, do you want to pay Zac Gallen $22 million to pitch for you for one more year? I don't know if that's a good idea for the Diamondbacks. Suddenly that looks very risky. So, he still has trade value. There's going to be half a dozen teams easily that would want to trade for him. I just don't expect a whole lot back.
Yeah, and I think you get to that point with, maybe not just Gallen, but other members of this team as well as the trade deadline gets closer. It's like, well, yeah, Gino Suárez, assuming that he's healthy in a month, he would have trade value. I mean, he would be a highly sought after commodity. Josh Naylor, Shelby Miller, Jalen Beeks, Merrill Kelly, right? This team has a number of these guys. Even for the ones that are healthy and performing well, though, Jack, I'm not sure it's necessarily a guarantee that you're getting a whole lot. I mean, for all these guys, you're talking about a 2-month rental. And realistically, it almost doesn't matter how good you are. You're not gonna get an opposing team's top overall prospect for 2 months of basically anyone. And certainly the players the Diamondbacks would have to offer. So I think that's a question that you could ask more largely as well about some of these other guys.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the expectations of the Diamondbacks as sellers, yes, in a weak sellers market where right now there are only 7, as you mentioned to me earlier today, clearly identifiable sellers. Should the Diamondbacks end up as sellers, based on whatever record they have in a month from today, then sure, they could shake up that market and probably do a little bit better than you might expect simply by having an infusion of talent pop into the market at the last minute. But it's still limited. That's just the way it goes in modern Major League Baseball. Teams are too smart to give up too much for guys who only have 2 months of control, unless they're super confident they can re-sign him. Look, I mean, it depends on the team too, right? If it's the Yankees and they decide they like a guy, if they traded for Gino and then they decided they liked having him, then they have the extra 5 or 10 million or 15 million to throw into a deal to keep him around. So there's that element depending on who the team is.
We have a comment in the chat from CM. Giving Gallen the qualifying offer when you don't have any other starter in-house to replace him isn't the worst idea, though, which is an interesting dynamic, Jack, that the Diamondbacks might be faced with. I mean, what's your gut right now? If Gallen finishes the year with somewhat similar numbers to what he has now and he's still a member of the Diamondbacks, would you offer him $22-23 million for one season, whatever the qualifying offer winds up being, and take the risk of him coming back?
Yes, I would, mainly because of who his agent is. His agent is very aggressive, Scott Boras. And, ultimately, I do think that he's in danger of being in a situation where his agent pushes for a deal that's no longer commensurate with what he is right now as a pitcher. We've seen this over and over again with Scott Boras, where he puts the asking price too high and he sticks to it too long, and all of a sudden it's spring training and your guy's not signed. Now, he did learn a lesson about that this past year, but what was the lesson? Shorter term deals with opt-outs and various options and ways to get out of the deal and potentially make more money if the pitcher has a good year. So, I would be pretty shocked if he accepted a qualifying offer simply because of who his agent is. But the risk is growing. That's what I'm trying to say here. Like it's gotten into that indeterminate zone all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. I think I would still give Zac Gallen the qualifying offer, knowing that Scott Boras is Scott Boras, and I almost cannot imagine Scott Boras taking a qualifying offer for a pitcher who has the track record that Zac Gallen still has. I do think it's worth noting with the way that those rules work. The compensation draft pick that the Diamondbacks would receive were he to sign elsewhere would depend on how much money he got. If the player signs for at least $50 million, that draft pick would come after the first round in competitive balance round A. But if Gallen were to sign for less than $50 million, it would come after the second round in competitive balance round B. And that's a pretty meaningful difference. And at this point, even if you give Gallen the qualifying offer, he rejects it as you're kind of anticipating, there's a decent chance. I mean, I don't know what the chance is of him taking the qualifying offer, but the chance of him signing for less than $50 million is probably higher than that. I think that's well within reason at this point.
Yeah. So I want to give our listeners a kind of a sneak peek on something I'm working on just real quickly. So if you add up all the free agent contracts that are going to be coming off the books, the Diamondbacks have approximately $73 million coming off the books, including Zac Gallen, $14 million. Now, Lourdes Gurriel could bump that up to 86 should he decide to opt out. Lourdes has an opt out. So, we don't know what Lourdes is going to do. And quite frankly, all it takes is an insanely hot month for Lourdes. And if he ends the season, 110 OPS plus, I think right now he's around 100. But if he ended the season at 110 OPS plus somehow, it's pretty understandable that he might consider opting out and would potentially get more than 14 million guaranteed for next year. So at least 73 million is coming off the books, and potentially 86. But they have other contracts that are increasing in value. For example, Corbin Carroll goes up to 10. Geraldo Perdomo goes to 6.3. Ketel Marte is going to actually be about 19.6. Eduardo Rodriguez is 21. Corbin Burns is 31.7. Yes, there's deferred money, but they have to fund that money by July 1. So it goes against the budget. And then you have quite a number of players that are arbitration eligible. A.J. Puck, Ryan Thompson, Kevin Ginkel, Pavin Smith, Alec Thomas, Ryan Nelson, Gabriel Marino, and Jose Herrera all have increasing salaries. And I've calculated at least 28, 29 million there. What I'm saying in total, once you add that and the other pre-arb players they have to add in, injury replacements, etc., the Diamondbacks are still looking at walking into the offseason with a payroll budget locked in at 145 million, give or take. And so what that means is they don't have $70, $80 million to spend just because it's all coming off the books. It's more like 40 to 50 if they stay at the same range that they're at now, which we don't even know if they're going to do, right? I mean, that's always the big question mark. Will Ken Kendrick keep the payroll the same? Will he cut it? Will he increase it? Attendance is up, but if they don't make the postseason, who knows what there's too many variables there. So I'm kind of going on a long time here, but I think it's important to understand that the Diamondbacks you can't just take 70, 80 million and say, oh, all these free agents are coming off the books. Look at all the money they'll have to spend. If you give Zac Gallen $22 million on a qualifying offer, now you're going to be up about 167, 170 million. And now you're only going to have another 20 to 30 million left to fill all the holes left by all the other free agents. So think about all this stuff, folks.
You mentioned Ken Kendrick and how he's certainly one of the variables going into next season. I wonder if he's also one of the variables. His perspective is one of the variables at the trade deadline as well. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, Jack, if you do make Zac Gallen available at the trade deadline, and yeah, there probably is a team that would be interested in trying to see if they can get him back to the pitcher he's been in the past. But as we said, you're probably not expecting a ton in terms of prospect capital in return for him. And I think at that point, maybe the primary incentive of dealing Gallen would be to save some money. You mentioned that there's $4.5 million that he would be owed from the end of July to the end of the season. That would be maybe what the D-backs would have to gain most if they were to deal Gallen. And that could be a factor with some of these other guys as well, is like, to what extent does Ken Kendrick feel the need to maybe tap the brakes on this season, and maybe that would position the Diamondbacks better for this offseason if they were to unload some of these contracts and save a little bit of money here in June or July.
Yeah, I mean, in total, if they sold all of them, I calculated they could save about 18 million. But I don't think they're going to do that.
No.
I mean, they would have to just go on, the mother of all losing streaks here and really just bury themselves to 10, 12 games out and totally just, poop the bed to the degree that would take to do that. So, yeah, I mean, 4 or 5 million here or there, I think it's a factor. They'd much rather buy. They're still hoping that they will be in a position to buy.
And we're going to get into that here shortly, as Mike Hazen did an interesting interview with Jesse Rogers from ESPN. Interesting story that we read, and are going to talk about some takeaways from that. And we will do that on the other side of this break.
By now, you know about Arena Club. Buy, sell, trade, open up slab packs to get a card that you don't think you could get usually, but the Grails will tell you that, for example, there's an Aaron Judge rookie card in this week's slab packs, so make sure you check those out.
No doubt. Those are what you want, the Grails.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Judge Grail is awesome, graded, traded if you want, tell you how much it's worth, whatever you want to do. And I'm a big Michael Jordan fan with my 23 shirt on. There's a Michael Jordan Grail in there that I'm looking forward to try to get.
20% off your first slab pack or card purchase at arenaclub.com/foul. Use code FOUL.
Well, Jack, Mike Hazen, of course, we are always locked into any interviews that Mike Hazen does. Anytime any member of this D-backs front office talks to the media as the trade deadline approaches. Jesse Rogers, as I mentioned before the break, wrote an interesting story about the Diamondbacks and how they might approach the trade deadline, which is now just a little over a month away at this point. Hazen talked about a number of things in this story, Jack. The quote that we have on the screen here, "Sharks in the water," is interesting. This was basically Hazen talking about how other teams are very much intrigued at the possibility of the Diamondbacks selling at the trade deadline. As we've been saying, they have a lot of pieces that they could offload that would be attractive to other teams. And while Hazen's preference is very clearly to buy, Hazen admitted that those phone calls are already rolling in here as the D-backs hovered just a couple games over 500.
He laughed in the article when he was speaking to Jesse Rogers, like every phone call begins with, "So, how you doing?"
They have to cushion the blow, right?
Kind of reminds me of Scott Braun's when I went on Foul Territory, asking me a few weeks ago, "Are the Diamondbacks okay?"
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, those calls are naturally going to come. I mean, everybody does the same thing that we all do. They know that those 6 or 7 players are free agents, and they know where the team is at in the standings, and so of course they're going to be making those kinds of phone calls and express interest in where these guys might be headed. So, I think the other part of the article to me that really stood out the most was two points. What Mike said about injuries, he said, we can't take any more injuries. And I think he's talking about Eugenio Suárez there. He actually said this before Ildemaro Vargas suffered a broken foot. but I don't think he was talking about Vargas. He was talking about
Fair.
Gino. If Gino ends up, getting a bad diagnosis after he finally gets his MRI, and if he has some kind of fracture in there and has to go on the injured list for over a month, that's going to be a pretty big thing for them to overcome. And Mike's going to be realistic about that. The team just called up Blaze Alexander. And Tim Towers playing third base. Look, these are nice utility players to have for depth. But if they're all playing at the same time, your offense is going to suffer, and you're not going to be in a position to win very many games as they have been. So I think Mike realizes that, and what he's saying there, we can't afford to take any more injuries on, is certainly directly in line with what my thinking is as well. At the same time, he's making it very clear that he's not going to do anything until he knows where his team stands. He also referenced the possibility of, hey, if the team is still in the race and they get to late July and they see these guys on the horizon coming back, Moreno, Carroll, hopefully Suarez won't be one of those guys, then he would be enticed to buy. So, as much as we want to talk about this and as much as you're going to see rumors out there, I just don't expect anything big to happen before July 15th. I really don't.
Another thing that stood out in this article for me, Jack, was Hazen talking about the competition in the wild card race. He said, I think the wild card needs to come back to us a little bit. The way the Brewers are playing now is something concerning for us. The Cardinals are a really good team. The Cubs are obviously very good. And then the Giants got better with Devers, and the Padres are really good, and the Reds are really good. He went on to talk about the Mets and the Phillies and the Braves, who, of course, are lurking not far behind as well. It was interesting for me to maybe I'm reading too much into this, but Hazen using the word concerning to describe the play of another team was just interesting to me. It seems like he has a little bit more, so often we hear players and coaches and front offices just talk about their internal operations and how we just need to take care of what we need to take care of, and we're going to be fine. But Hazen is not totally doing that here. He's like, yeah, we need to take care of what we need to take care of, but we also need some of these other teams to cool off a little bit. And to his point, that's not really happening right now. The Cardinals are playing really well. The Brewers are playing really well. It looks like Jacob Mizorowski is like the best pitcher ever, apparently, as he pitched really well again today against the Pirates, I believe, at least last I checked.
Better than Paul Skeens.
Better than Paul Skeens, which is saying something. Although, granted, I would rather face the Pirates offense than the Brewers offense in that case. But yeah, there's an awareness here, Jack, of other teams' performance that we're not really used to seeing from this front office.
Yeah. By the way, the D-backs are 3.5 games back in the NL wild card at the moment, not 3.
Thank you. That changed, I think, right before we went live.
Right.
There we go.
I think, and hat tip to who was the gentleman, the basketball and football guy. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. I think part of what he's looking at, obviously they're evaluating the talent on the other teams. He's also looking at those head-to-head matchups and the tiebreakers, right? Say, for example, the Brewers end up winning the Central. Well, they've already lost a tiebreaker to the Cubs. They're down 0-3 to both the Cardinals and the Reds.
Yeah.
So they're not in a great shape against those NL Central teams. That's definitely a factor as well. They broke even with the Mets. The bottom line is the D-backs can't afford to even be in a tie situation because they're basically losing all these tiebreakers. They have very few that they're ahead on. They're ahead on the Braves. Okay, whether or not that's going to matter or not, they may still pull it out. But the Diamondbacks are going to have to get super hot and zoom past everybody. They just played 9 games against, one good team and 2 bad teams, and they went 5-4. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, that brings me back to some final takeaways from this White Sox series, Jack. A situation where the Diamondbacks had a chance to pull off a sweep to get to 4 games over 500, but instead we're here talking about them being 2 games over 500. And yes, as you said, going into this series, as well as the Rockies series, expecting a sweep is maybe setting the bar pretty high. But also, the D-backs are like, this is the kind of thing they're going to need to start doing if they want to really get back into this race. The White Sox are a team that you can sweep. It does happen, pretty regularly. So unfortunately, they were not able to do that. Circling around to some various takeaways, some storylines from this series. Eduardo Rodriguez did pitch really well in the game on Monday. He has an ERA of just over 2 in 4 starts since coming off the IL. I think he's probably worth talking about for a second here, Jack. That's noteworthy that Eduardo has really bounced back and is starting to look a lot more like the pitcher the D-backs thought they were getting when they signed him.
Yes, it's a very interesting development. I think that Torey keeps talking about the fact that he's fully healthy. And so now he's pitching with the confidence of a fully healthy pitcher, which makes me wonder, then why was he pitching if he wasn't healthy? But that's a separate question.
That's fair.
Oh, did I just open up that whole can of worms? Oh, my God. Here go the comments.
Eduardo had 10 strikeouts in that game on Monday as he just continues to rack up strikeouts at a pretty impressive rate. Granted, I know you and I were talking about this the other day. It does feel like a lot of those strikeouts have come against lesser opponents, like the Chicago White Sox. And granted, that was kind of a risk when the Diamondbacks signed Eduardo in the first place, was that he was pitching in the AL Central, which at the time was pretty clearly the worst division in all of baseball. And so looking at his numbers when the D-backs signed that contract, it was like, all right, these numbers are really good, but the NL West is pretty different from the AL Central. And while he's really turned things around lately, Jack, I think you'd still like to see Erod do it against, the Dodgers or the Padres or a team like that. That's really when I think I'd start to feel like he is a truly reliable, solid member of this rotation.
Right. Just to what Jesse and I were talking about. So his season high 12 strikeouts came against the Washington Nationals. That was back on April 5th. He had 10 against the Phillies on May 4th, but he gave up 4 runs in that game because he also walked 4 batters. He struck out 10 Chicago White Sox, of course, just 2 days ago, and he struck out 9 Miami Marlins on April 17th. So, that's 41 of his 74 strikeouts came in those 4 games. He hasn't struck out more than 5 batters in any other game. So, to the point that we were discussing, he's kind of done, all the peripheral metrics that indicate whether it's xERA or FIP, those are being bolstered by 3 or 4 games where he ran up the strikeout counts against aggressive teams with not great hitters. And whether or not that's a good indicator or not is a little. We're still in small sample size territory, so split the difference is what I would do. If you're thinking about your expectations going forward, split the difference between where his current ERA is at and where his current predictive metrics are at.
We talked about yesterday how good Ryan Nelson was in that game, 5 innings of 1-run ball. Nelson continues to be solid for this team. We also have a note on here about how Eugenio Suárez did not play in the remainder of the series with that hand injury. However, as was just pointed out by El Gallo in the chat, we did just get some news from Casey Drotter, who is covering the series for MLB.com out in Chicago. Casey just tweeted a couple of minutes ago that Eugenio Suárez took light batting practice earlier today and expressed confidence that he'd be back in the Diamondbacks lineup on Friday. Jack, that is very, very good news for the Diamondbacks if Gino is not going on the IL and is pretty much just going to get right back in there with a hand contusion.
It's very good news if he already had an MRI that we haven't heard about yet.
Yes, true.
Okay. Which is very possible. That happens. Like, for example, when Gabby had that first MRI, we didn't even know it happened right away. We found out later. So, maybe he had that done yesterday afternoon before the game, or maybe he had it done this morning. I don't know. I think he was in a dugout. So hopefully he had an MRI before they let him go and take batting practice.
Yeah, that's definitely something to follow up with, if it hasn't been asked already, is has Gino had the MRI yet? That's really the big question there. We got a fun question in the chat from Zoe AZ. Will the podcast in the fall cover the new Tucson Winter League team or strictly the D-backs? Well, hey, in the off season, in the winter, we're always going to be looking for things to talk about. So Jack and I are both really baseball sickos, so I wouldn't put it past us for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, also we wish to get more involved in covering a little bit more of minor leagues and things like that. And there'll be more reviews of that kind of thing during the off season and during breaks in the schedule where we have a little bit more time to get to it. There's just been such a flood of Diamondbacks news, though, that it's a little tough to get to some of the peripheral stuff.
Well, speaking of Diamondbacks news, Jack, as anticipated, Blaze Alexander was the call up as the D-backs put Ildemar Vargas on the injured list with that fracture in his foot. Blaze Alexander comes up to the majors. This is the first time we've seen Blaze in the big leagues in quite a while at this point, Jack. He had a really nice run toward the beginning of last year, kind of faded as the season went on. His numbers in AAA are pretty decent, but at the same time, there's maybe a little more swing and miss there than you'd really like to see.
Yeah, I wrote about him today, and kind of went through all of that. His, strikeout rate is up around, I think 24.5 or 26.5, somewhere in that range. His ground ball percentage is still pretty high too, almost 49%. Those were the issues last year. I think it's 24.5 this year in Reno. It was 26.5 last year, the strikeout rate in MLB. And the ground ball rate was 51% in MLB last year. So those were the two things that really precipitated and caused his slump, was hitting the ball on the ground too much and too much swing and miss. Blaze got off to a blazing start, sorry, pun intended, as he said. But he lost the confidence of his manager on the defensive side of things. He's charged with a few errors. There were a few misplays where he wasn't charged with an error, and those things seemed to be backing up on him as the game had sped up on him. And he subsequently lost playing time to Kevin Newman. Now he's doing okay, like Jesse said, in AAA. I mean, he's got a 120 WRC plus. So even when you account for the high octane PCL offense environment, he's still doing better than average. He's played third base, second base, shortstop, and even has 88 innings at center field. That's an experiment that the team wanted to get to with him during spring training. So, here comes Blaze. He's going to get some play time. Hopefully, he won't have the defensive issues that he had before. Torey Lovullo says, my number one thing with my utility infielders is they've got to pick up the baseball. If Blaze starts making fielding errors or throwing errors, he'll sit down or get sent down right away.
Yeah, we saw some issues there last year, certainly. I do think it's worth noting Blaze's numbers in AAA this year are considerably better than what they were a year ago when he was in AAA. He had a 797 OPS in AAA last year compared to 892 this year. His on-base percentage this season is 413 down there. So he has shown some patience, some ability to draw walks. The at-bat quality has improved. So, we'll see how much time the Diamondbacks ultimately give Blaze as he joins the Major League team. Certainly good to have him around. You and I have both spent a decent amount of time around Blaze in the clubhouse, Jack. We can both attest that he is just an all-around fun guy to be around. Always said hi to every member of the media. Just a great person to have around the clubhouse from a vibe standpoint. So I'm sure his teammates will be looking forward to that. Speaking of, yeah, absolutely. Speaking of vibes, Jack, I did want to hit again on the Ketel Marte situation, which of course we discussed on the show yesterday. It was very sad having a fan say some not great things about Ketel Marte's late mother, who passed away tragically in a car accident back in 2017. We got word today that fan was banned not only from right field, but from all major league facilities indefinitely. And we also had this that I've been showing on the screen here. a really kind gesture from the White Sox organization. They put out this tweet that says, "We're with you, Ketel Marte." And then they also have this amazing picture of Ketel at the plate. And in the background, you can see the message they put on the screen at right field, which says, "Baseball is family. The White Sox community supports Ketel Marte." I know the White Sox organization maybe doesn't have the best reputation on the field, but off the field, Jack, you can really appreciate how they approach this.
Yeah, and it's really great to see how the White Sox and the baseball community and baseball fans at large from all around the world, as Todd was saying on the broadcast, have stepped up to rally around the concept of compassion and decency. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot more good people in this world than there are bad. Sometimes good people are enticed to do bad things for whatever reason. But most of us are good in our hearts. I hope I can include myself in that. I believe that almost everybody I know and associate with is that way. And so, let's take the positive out of this, in that we're seeing a lot of goodwill and a lot of messaging coming out about, hey, let's just be nicer to people. Let's be nicer to each other. Nicer to strangers, nicer to people we know, nicer to our family members. No matter what you believe in this world, that's never going to be a bad way to go about life.
Yeah, well said. The Diamondbacks, you can give to the Arizona Diamondbacks Foundation. You can make a donation in honor of Ketel Marte's late mother. I know a number of D-backs fans have already done that. They talked about that on the broadcast. We'll have the link to that down in the description. So if you would like to, I'm sure it would mean a lot for all parties involved. So great to see Diamondbacks fans rallying around Ketel and Jack as well, sporting the I don't know, when was that a giveaway, Jack? Is
That was
that
a
a few
Silver
years ago?
Slugger. No, just
Oh,
recently, Silver Slugger hat giveaway.
there we go. Ketel Marte. Yeah, that's another way to show your support, is wear all your Ketel Marte gear around as you go about your day. Can't go wrong there. Well, before we get out of here, we do want to talk about the Diamondbacks' upcoming series against the Miami Marlins. The Marlins are a team the Diamondbacks saw back in April. They played them on the road. They did complete a sweep against the Marlins. The only time they saw them this season. Miami comes in with a record of 32-45. The Marlins are not a good baseball team. I think we expected that coming into the year. They've been maybe a little bit more competent than I thought they would be. So this is certainly a team you want to take seriously, Jack, but also an opportunity again for the Diamondbacks to try to gain some ground in the standings.
Yeah, I think they've won 3 of the last 4, though, and they're giving the Giants a hard time. They play them again tonight. I
Yep.
think they won the first 2 games of that series. So, let's see how that goes. They won the first 2 games against the Giants, or they beat Atlanta 5-3, and then they beat the Giants 4-2 on the 24th. So they're playing the Giants today, and again tomorrow. They don't have the off day. So let's see how they come out of that series over the last 2 games. But like I said, they're a major league team. You expect to win the series against them. Don't expect a sweep. I keep telling people these sweeps are hard to get, especially with this team and this pitching staff. But if they can go ahead and just keep chipping away and beat teams they're supposed to beat, and then come up with something against the better teams, then they still got a shot at this.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can see on the screen here, the Marlins have a team OPS plus of 91 and a team ERA plus of 91 as of the time of us recording this. So they are below average on both fronts. They do have a few hitters having good seasons. Some names that you very well might not recognize: Kyle Stowers, Dane Myers, Jesus Sanchez, all having decent seasons for them offensively. So there are some bats to watch out for there. On the pitching front, we are expecting Uri Perez against Merrill Kelly on Friday, Sandy Alcantara against Brandon Pfaadt on Saturday, and then Cal Quantrill going against Eduardo Rodriguez in the finale on Sunday. It should be fun to see what Sandy Alcantara looks like, Jack. That is definitely a big name here around the league as the trade deadline gets closer.
Yeah, he's been doing really well for the month of June. He's let's see, was he got 2.74 ERA in 23 innings pitched this month. So all of a sudden, and the FIP is 3.21. He struck out 19 guys in 23 innings. He's only walked 5, given up 2 homers. So overall for this month, he appears to be turning his season around. And by the way, the Marlins, they have, I'm looking at their baseball reference page as I'm talking to you guys. Calvin Faucher, 1.27 ERA plus. Tyler Phillips, 1.10 ERA plus. Ronnie Enriquez, 1.49 ERA plus. Lake Bashar, 1.18 ERA plus. Anthony Bender, 1.77 ERA plus. And then there's a few more guys over 100 down below as well. So I'm going to say that, their bullpens probably perform better than the Diamondbacks has this year, although the Diamondbacks bullpen has been better lately.
Yeah, as we said the other day, such and such team has a better bullpen than the Diamondbacks, but then again, that's true for just about any team. The Marlins would certainly fall in that category. They have a decent group there at the back end. So we'll see how it goes. As you said, the Marlins still have 2 more games to play between now and when this series begins, as they have Game 2 against the Giants here on Wednesday evening, and then the finale of that series on Thursday. D-backs, of course, are presumably on a plane as we speak, heading back home. They finally get an off day after this long 9-game road trip as this series gets ready to start on Friday. Before we get out of here, we want to hit maybe a few comments that have come through here in the last few minutes. As we do this, if you haven't already hit the like button on this live stream, we'd really appreciate it if you would. It helps us out tremendously. We have a couple people here, Jack, who are saying that yes, 2BMC said yes, they are. Speaking of sweeps, they are absolutely hard against any team, but they kind of need to make up for their earlier losses at this point, which is, yeah, I mean, it's true. If the Diamondbacks just they just do kind of what you're expected to do in every series between now and the end of July, they're not going to be in great position at that point, and that of course could have ramifications for how they approach the trade deadline. Zoe AZ says, feels like we are cursed. We always play the bad teams after they get a little bit hot. Yeah, anecdotally, I guess it kind of does feel that way a little bit, Jack. And it certainly is the case with this Marlins team, at least as of right now, is, yeah, as you said, they just took 2 out of 3 from the Braves, and they already got the first game of this Giants series.
Yeah, I think, look, it's not realistic to expect the Diamondbacks to make the playoffs if at some point in time they can't go on a 6 or 7 or 8 game win streak. We're waiting for that. What's the longest win streak this year? 5, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
So, and that was a while ago. So they're going to need to find a way to get on something even a little bit longer. I mean, they're going to have to pull it off. How that's going to happen with all the pitching woes and all the injury woes, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say it can't happen. This is baseball, and we certainly can't predict it. There is a lot of talent still on this team, but a lot of it's on the injured list.
Mark makes an interesting point in the chat. Speaking of Zac Gallen, he said Zach's fastball has more horizontal break than pre-2024, maybe not tunneling with the curve like it used to. It's a good point, and it's something that I have definitely thought about. I actually talked with Eugenio Suárez about this briefly at one point. I've crossed paths with Eno a few times. Of course, for those who don't know, Eno is very much involved in creating the Stuff Plus metric that we reference from time to time. He knows basically all the things that there is to know about pitching. And he told me that sometimes when your horizontal movement on your fastball goes up, your Stuff Plus will actually go down. The thinking is that you basically want a fastball to have the most unusual shape as you can. And so oftentimes the elite fastballs have a ton of vertical ride, but actually not very much horizontal movement at all. And that's what really makes them hard for hitters to square up, who are used to seeing a little bit more horizontal movement than what they're actually getting on those pitches. So hard for me to speak confidently to whether that's at the heart of the issue here for Gallen. I mean, in 2025, he's averaging 4.4 inches of arm side movement. Last year it was 4.7, and it was just 3 inches back in 2023. So it has ticked up about 1.5 inches here compared to 2023. I don't know, Jack, whether that's the reason that Zac Gallen is what he is right now. That's hard to say.
It's very possible, and I think it's a really good point to follow up on, and something we can even ask him about.
Yeah. It's a great idea. Well, the Diamondbacks are returning home this weekend. We will certainly be locked into all of those games. We will keep you all updated on social media about our show schedule. Officially, this is our last episode for this week, but it's possible that we might pop in another episode on Friday after that game. So stay tuned to our social media channels for updates on that. And speaking of, you can find us over on Twitter. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. Our show is at Snakes Territory. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like on this video. It really helps us out. Subscribe to the channel as we continue the march toward 1,000 subscribers. And if you're watching us after the live stream, you can, of course, leave a comment. We love interacting with you in the comments section. Jack does a great job covering the D-backs over at si.com/MLB/Diamondback. So be sure to check out all of his great work coming out over there. Jack, anything else before we say goodbye on this Wednesday evening?
Please be sure to circle back to look at the comments under the video today in the description and find that link to the opportunity to make a little donation. You can $4, $44, whatever numbers convenient for you. Anything helps. Everything helps. And everyone will feel better about it, including yourself.
Well, thank you all once again for joining us here on this Wednesday afternoon. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.